So, friend, this is another one of our mini episodes where what we like to do is talk about pressing issues, current events, things that are kind of hot off the presses that are outside of our maybe more wellness topics that are pretty consistent over here at justUS. But this came out this week in an article by the New York Times. But what they were doing was capturing a moment by the Surgeon General. His name is Dr. Vivek Murthy, I believe it's pronounced. And what he has said is he believes that social media should come with warning labels. And this was kind of a huge moment because it really places a lot of responsibility on tech companies, but it wasn't actually out of the blue because last year, he also said that he felt like there should be more accountability around social media and how it is linked to adolescents' mental health. As someone who obviously is a parent who has a teenager now, what are your thoughts on this?
I think there absolutely should be a warning label, but I don't think it's just related to teenagers. I think for all of our mental well-being.
So for adults too, you're
Oh,
saying?
sure, for sure. I mean, people can choose as adults to smoke cigarettes, but they have to do so knowing that there's a higher risk of cancer.
Yeah.
People can drink alcohol knowing that there's a higher risk of whatever. I think it's a similar thing. It's not innocuous. It doesn't come without its risks. And I think for the developing brain, even more so. I also just have so much compassion for parents of children of all ages, not only because technology is so ubiquitous and everywhere, but 24 hours is a long day. I mean, not that people are up 24 hours, but it is a lot of time to fill. And there's only so many times you can play blocks or do numbers or go for a walk or go to the park. People have to make money around here and work. And it is often just the easiest thing for children to use an iPad or a tablet, and the algorithms find the kids. I mean, I found Mari, my youngest is 4, last night after her bath. She had stolen her big sister's iPad. She was naked in a corner of her room watching YouTube, and it was this woman singing nursery rhymes. It was fine, but like, she already knows that it's something maybe she shouldn't be doing.
Yep.
That she needs to hide. I mean, it was all of the things.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But you know what? You bring up a good point about compassion for parents, because I had a family member who for a time could not afford childcare, and she worked from home. And so her child was not in pre-K, he was pre-K age, and he was at home with her. And I think we give kids an iPad or a tablet because we think physically we can see them, they're physically safe. But what can be missed is the emotional and psychological harm and danger that's being done to them simultaneously.
So I remember last year, so I have a 13-year-old now, so last year I had a 12-year-old, and I didn't even know what YouTube Shorts were. And my oldest came to me and said, "Mom, I'm taking YouTube off my phone." She had just gotten a phone. And I said, "Okay, that's fine." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because I don't think it's good for my mental health."
Oh, wow.
So she had art, and I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, "Well, I think I need to have a 6-pack."
Oh my gosh.
And I know that you would say that that's, not normal, and like my body's perfect the way it is. And I my body, and I was like, oh my gosh, like despite my best efforts to be body positive, to be body inclusive, and she's aware, and still they found her.
So then what happens when we lack that ability, which by the way, a lot of adults do as well. And so there takes a certain amount of executive functioning, which is in our prefrontal cortex, that develops until we're 25 years old to be able to self-regulate like that. Not to mention the fact, and I think this is what the Surgeon General and others have pointed to, these apps are made to be addictive. They make money by the length of time we stay on them because they can run more ads. And so nobody wants you to get off of the Instagrams, the YouTubes, the thing and the thing and the thing. And so they're going to put more sophisticated content in front of you that they think speaks to your interests, but they also want to incentivize you scrolling continuously.
I just wonder if there's more public health interventions that could come from the outside, like limited time on the apps, or or parents having to sign in for their children and approve what their children are going to watch. I don't know. I mean, I'm also trying to not put more burden on parents, but there's something so scary.
I mean, if you ask me, it's a public health crisis.
Yeah. No, me too.
Because beyond what it's doing to the psyches of young people and adults, there's also something about the way that young people are socializing online that the adults in their lives don't really have a way to control and contain. So here in DC, for example, I went out to National Harbor and I saw these signs everywhere about a mandatory teenage curfew. And I'm like, and the curfew was at 5 p.m. And I was like, what is going on? Something must have happened. Girl, Googled it, and 800. First of all, how did 800 teens know where to show up? Social media. We're down at the harbor and had a big brawl, melee, like we're representing so-called sets and we're fighting and stealing and just causing the hugest ruckus ever at the National Harbor. We're endangering themselves and other people. That is only possible because that shit ignites like wildfire on an application.
The other thing that ignites like wildfire, that's terrible, is bullying.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So these group texts, people can say really unkind things, and children can never get away from it. So bullying is not new. Social hierarchy is not new. Mean girls are not new. Boys talking about girls' bodies is not new. None of this is new, but we could kind of get away from it when we went home.
Yeah, true. The cyberbullying, oh no.
You just never can get away
from it. You can never get away from it. And the mean girl who's in a group and who's out of a group has gone from a lunch table into a literal group chat into certain online spaces. So back to your point, it is omnipresent. And so if you have been cast out of the group, you feel that everywhere you go, even in the virtual space. And It is just so incredibly harmful.
Can I also say something else? It's also making children and young people so boring.
Girl.
They all dress the same. Not everyone dresses the same, but all people in these groups all dress the same and act the same and say the same things. Like being unique and having your own interests and doing things and touching things and experiencing things outside of a digital space happens so infrequently.
Yeah. And this is, let me just say this. It's also not new because I remember growing up and my grandmother was a domestic worker and she would go to different white people's homes and she would come home and try to like implement those same rules. I remember this very clearly. And one of them was restricting TV. And I was like, what? So I just want to watch TV. But I am so grateful that she began to do that she learned that in some capacity, because what she taught me was I had to read a book. I had to go outside and play. And so for her generation, it was television. It was cable TV, which was new. For us, it is now social media, which also includes a television component. And so in some ways, it's even worse.
Except if you want to see the Celtics game.
You can watch it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay, I forgot you were an avid Celtics fan.
Well, I am an avid Celtics fan. I am an avid Celtics fan. I got rid of the NBA channel because it was too expensive and I didn't think we were watching enough. And then I couldn't watch the game because I wasn't going to take my girls to a bar. It's not on YouTube. It's not on anything. You have to have cable. Anyway.
So then you want to use it for you can, is your point.
Right. Okay, so there's also something else, and this is kind of goes along with the Surgeon General's warning that I've heard kind of murmurs about from my friends who have older teenagers. And then there was a report, I don't know where it was from, that came out this week that said that young people of this generation, so let's say like 13 to 19, 13 to 20, are partying way less drinking, less drugs, less sex than our generation. I have to laugh because I wasn't doing any of those things. But we all knew
people who were engaged in all those things.
Right, all of those things. I actually just had my high school reunion, and I was like, all of you people were doing all of those things at very young ages.
And you've not aged well, but that's my own opinion. I will say what you want.
No, I was just going to share something about my reunion, but I don't think it's appropriate. Young people of this generation are engaging in some of these other public health risky behaviors, smoking, drinking, drugs, sex, way less than our generation and the generations before.
Okay.
But there's never been a generation that's as sad.
Absolutely.
Documented sad.
Yep. And that's what this New York Times article pointed to as well. They did a really good job of not only talking about the Surgeon General's opinion, but also there is some competing research around whether or not these applications are really causing harm. I think a discriminating adult who understands life and who has seen young people around devices know that it's true, right? But what it says is that this generation has the highest rates of suicidal ideations of any generation before. So back to your point about there just being this blanket sadness that young people, this cloud that they're dealing with daily. And I think it's really hard to argue that it's not some influence of social media applications and devices that are in their lives.
Because what does social media do? It shows you what you don't have. Either if it's physical, aspirational, economic, travel lust, food lust, body lust, relationship lust, professional lust. It's like this aspirational, curated setting for perfect existence.
And again, if that's how if we struggle to separate those tenets of social media from what's real, what's curated, what's organic, what's not, as adults, imagine what a 10-year-old is doing. Like, just really think about, they are seeing things online and everything is being considered real. Everything is being considered, oh, this happened in real time in this way and I wasn't invited.
Or they're also seeing really extreme versions of reality. So something that I've seen my oldest watch is extreme Red Bull extreme sports. So people doing these extreme tricks on motorcycles or diving off of. Are you laughing?
No. I'm listening. I'm like, this sounds crazy.
Dangerous stuff.
Yeah.
But because there must be some dopamine receptor that.
Absolutely.
It's like the risky behavior.
And she's an athlete.
She's an athlete, so it makes sense. But it's like, I don't want her to normalize diving off of a cliff.
Yeah, well, it's like the dopamine influx that I get when I watch a shopping haul, right? Because my thing is fashion.
Right, but a shopping haul could be $150,000.
And we should not normalize that. So putting those types of things in front of young people all the time indiscriminately can be a problem. And that's the thing too. I think the warning label is not saying to ban it. It's not saying it should not exist. Because I think about my little brother who's trans, and I remember when he was about 12 or 13, he would watch a lot of queer and trans people or non-binary people online. And he didn't know those people in real life who had those identities, who shared that with him. And I do believe that there was something about him coming into himself, that there were online figures on YouTube specifically that helped him to hold space for. So that's one thing that I do want to say, that in some ways we can find a tribe and a community in a virtual space. And that is probably one of the best parts of the internet. So it is not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It is about a lack of regulation and a mindfulness in the way that these things are being marketed to young people.
And that young people don't have the brain development to make these decisions on their own.
Absolutely.
So I agree with you. Think about all the activism that has been fostered online, both positive and negative. We're creating a community online. You're a digital creator. So we're starting a small business online. So it is nothing to do with us believing or not believing about what this medium is. It's just, it exists.
Exactly.
And this is how business and our world runs.
Yes.
But how can we do it in a safe way for young people.
That allows for them to be healthy and to be whole without undue influence.
And how can we get to a place where separating yourself from technology isn't just a product of privilege?
That's deep. Are you saying as far as who
soft life stuff?
I mean, it goes back to what I just said about my grandparents, right? That my grandmother would go to clean Miss Guest, which was one of the white women that she worked for a long time, go clean her house and then come home and say, wait a minute, there's something around how you are engaging with technology that is not healthy. So it is a knowledge and a skill set that many people who are in low income working class environments just don't have.
Yes, and an actual financial cost. So I send my kids to a summer camp where they can't have technology.
Yeah.
But that costs a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And that's an intentional decision that I'm making for them to be in the woods away from technology for 3 weeks every summer.
But you also mentioned that your oldest daughter goes to a school where she has to lock her phone up before she gets to school.
Yeah. So part of the Surgeon General's recommendation was no phones in school.
Right.
And a lot of people immediately responded very negatively to that for safety reasons. Like, I need my kid to walk to school, or my kid takes the bus to school. And I responded to you and I said, these things are not mutually exclusive. My child also has a phone and walks herself to school. She walks into her school and has to drop off her phone and doesn't pick it up until the end of the day. That is something that we do that in courts.
Yeah, but and I think though, first, there are some schools in America, especially ones that are under-resourced and underfunded, that logistically, that would just be a nightmare. They don't have the right staff. They are not operating from a mental health perspective. There are no restorative principles in the schools. And so there's something, back to your point around privilege, that is an expectation that everyone adopts to that norm, right? That is not happening writ large.
I also imagine think about schools that opposed wearing masks.
Oh.
Right, so imagine not allowing kids to have their phones.
Well, I was going to say that as well, that if we do not end up with another 4 years of Biden, I guarantee you this conversation is going to go away, because there's something around individual liberties and a lack of regulation that we already know a Trump presidency would look like, right?
And we also know that public health interventions work. Think about car seats.
Yes.
Think about smoking.
Yes.
Think about HIV.
Yes.
And safer sex.
Yes.
Think about antivirals.
Yes.
Think about STIs, right? Think about public transportation. We know that public health interventions, when they are applied to a population, have positive impact. We know that this thing, social media, access to technology, is having a negative impact as it is used by young people now. How can we make it safer?
Exactly.
I also think that we have to move away from banning or either or conversations. No one's banning technology. Technology is a part of life. We're not, maybe in 25 years it won't be, but right now, technology is a part of all of our lives and our young people's lives. So just to say like, oh, you shouldn't give your kid access to a phone or access to technology, that's not something that most people can decide.
Yeah.
So how can we make it a safer experience is something that I hope that we can keep talking about on this platform.
And what it takes, though, are people who are in influential positions and who are at the head of state and federal agencies like the Surgeon General, for example, to make it a public health issue. And I don't think we are having enough of those conversations. You all sound off. Let us know your thoughts. We would love to know how you feel, especially as maybe educators and people who are in public health fields or public health adjacent, what you are seeing, what the research is saying, and again, your opinions on the matter. Thanks for listening to justUS. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to learn more about our podcast, be sure to check us out on our website at justuspodcast.com. You can also reach out to us there if you want to be featured on the show, or if you have a business or a product that you think would be a good fit for our audience. Thanks again for listening.